Good morning, Dale.
Good morning. Finally on. Must have been a busy meeting. Morning.
If you want to go ahead with your monthly report.
Okay, I am ready. And thank you for inviting me back for the next month, the month of May. And good morning to you, Madam Chair and Council. So the month of May wasn't real busy, but it was busy enough. So I'll go ahead and start from the top of my report. Of course, I'm going to still continue relationships with our local and tribal, state, and national committees that I'm tied to. And our UCC is kind of stepping down a little bit. We're still kind of there, but we're down to a lower step just for availability for in case needed. And of course, I'll still continue to help out with our tribal health and public health for any resources or needs that they need. And that's kind of standardly with my job too, and my connections with tribal and public health. And of course, I'm still working with Red Cross. I try to do that weekly with them, keep that connection. And then there's the FEMA 8 teleconference calls I get in on every Friday. I do attend the Zoom meetings for the Tribal Safety and Health Committee, which is kind of a question right now, and we'll follow up on our next meeting this next month. Our meetings are normally the third Wednesday in each month. So then the state DES coordinators have had a Zoom meetings for the statewide coordinators. And then this week is the Western District. If I had travel money, I would be there, but I can communicate with them through Zoom. And I've got a Zoom meeting coming up this afternoon for where they're at in Bozeman. Then Climate Change Committee, still involved with them. They're doing a lot of interesting things too. Fish and Wildlife and Parks with CSKT AIS incident management team. I kind of stay connected with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks to follow up on what's going on with the AIS inspection sites. So far this season or this year, they've caught 21 boats that were infested with mussels. And my question is how are they getting this far? Getting into Montana? Are we the only state that's really working hard at finding these boats? But they are doing a very good job and keeping our state clean. So I'm really happy with what's going on there. So I talk weekly, if not almost every other day, with our local National Weather Service out of Missoula. And they still reassure me that there shouldn't be any problem with any flood situation here. According to what we have for snowpack and the forecasts of rain, of course, we're getting some good rain here. We're getting about 2 inches each time. The upper elevations, it's just adding a little bit of snow to it, but it's not a lot, and then with the meltdown and the amount that's put on there, it's almost even itself out. Supposed to continue to see more rain today and through tomorrow morning, and then from Saturday on, we're looking at really nice weather up in the 70s and 80s. So looking forward to that. As far as flood control goes, of course, our safety dams people really watch how the dams are filling up and the stream flows and that stuff too. And I can look at our different stream flows on a website. There is one stream that I can't look at anymore, and that's the Crow Creek, which is also part of the Post Creek drainage area. So I've got to physically go look at that to make sure that it's not jumping the banks any place. And so far, all our streams are looking real good, even with the couple inches of rain each night that we're getting. So I feel really happy with that. I also take a trip every once in a while up the East Shore to look at those streams coming down. And in past, we've had some of those jump the culverts and go across the road. So I look at those real good in case we get some heavy rains up in the mountains right there. So moving on, we started out the month with one crash. We had an individual in his pickup truck decided to bypass the Nine Pipes Bridge on Highway 93 and decided to put his truck right into the part of the Nine Pipes Reservoir there, which is really a channel that goes underneath the bridge and not really fast flow of water until we get a lot of water runoff. But as the truck hit the water, the individual, I guess, made it out there okay, and all that incident is under investigation, so I can't go any farther than that. But anyway, when the truck hit the water, he took out the oil pan of his truck, and then a little bit of oil went into the stream down there. First responders from Ronan, the Ronan Fire did an excellent job, and they deployed absorbing floating booms upstream and downstream of where that crash site was. So I was really happy when I showed up at the site, and there wasn't that much that I could do. They pretty much were taking care of it. And once the truck was pulled out, there was some big puddles of engine oil, which I was able to pick up with some absorbent pads. So they left the booms in place for a few days in case there was any residuals that it could pick up, because those booms will pick up oil too. So those should have been pulled by now, because those can be dried out and reused. So, and then talking about spill response, been working with Quatucknuck, who their manager there has control of the Polson Marina and of course the Big Arm Marina too. And every year I try to do some training for the people that work in the marinas that do the fueling and dealing with the boats and stuff like that for spill response. And we do have equipment there. And I've been talking to Dave Sanchez, who is moving on to Gray Wolf. And so his replacement is Joe Antiste. And he's going to be my new marina manager. As soon as I get connected with him, we'll get this figured out. So the week of June 7th will be second week in June. We're going to set up some training. I'm going to invite everybody that's involved with the marinas there with the tribe. I'll also invite the county, because search and rescue does a lot of that kind of response stuff too. And I'd like to have them in place so that they know where our equipment is and that, in case they help us out. And also I would like to invite Blue Bay, the people up there that deal with the boats in the marina up in there. Although they don't have a fueling station, which I'm pretty happy about, they do fuel boats while they're out in the water, and I want them to have the equipment and the training to be able to respond to any spill. Of course, we want to train anybody that, you know, don't no dripping or, you know, no spilling into the water at all, just trying to be as cautious as possible. So we'll do all that in our training. EPA would like to be notified anytime we see a sheen in the water. And I told him, I said, you know, the sheen in the marina areas is just kind of a constant thing. So you're going to get a lot of phone calls, because that's the way I'm going to train it. And that's what they want. They want to know, because the lake is a navigable water, and they want, you know, the sheens to be noted to them, whether it's a little one or not, I guess. So we'll work on that protocol. And so I'm looking forward to that training in a couple of weeks. And then a while ago, we had a false alarm at the the fire depot. And anytime we get a report that there's a fire there at the tire depot, you know, a lot of alarms go off. So I went ahead and investigated, and it wasn't in the tire depot at all, which was a good relief. It was the contractors of the construction company next door to them. They were burning some scrap timber or lumber in there. So things were good. County OEM was there, and of course he's the fire marshal, and he kind of had a little talk with them about this too, and making sure that they notify people. They did have a permit, but they didn't notify when they were starting that fire. So that is pretty much what I've got. I'm open for any questions.
Any questions from council? I had a couple, Dale.
Okay.
Did you say there was no flood warnings?
As of to date, there has been no warnings. And of course, you know, our safety and dams people watch all the levels and flows. And if there's anything that goes out of whack that really is filling up fast or potential flooding, they will notify me so that we can make sure things get taken care of on that. I know that safety dams and our canals people, they work really well together and they balance out the flows so that a lot of our streams don't overflow and they just stick it in a canal instead. So, but no, I haven't heard about anybody having problems with floods. Of course, it's, you know, I make sure I got the sand piles in place, and then I will put out a notice once we get closer to that closer potential of flooding, a notice on where you can find the sand, who all has sandbags. And of course, all the fire districts, they have pallets of sandbags, empty sandbags that they can assist the public with in getting sandbags done. And if it gets to be a big problem, then I can recruit people. I can pull people out of the division of fire or whoever is available to help do the sandbagging. I know a few years back when we had flood problems down in Arlee, the whole town just kicked in and we were able to take care of the sandbagging really good. And I was really happy to see that. But we haven't seen that in a while. So knock on wood that we don't too. And like I said, our local weather people say that they don't see it yet. So.
Okay, I guess I was reading day old news about the Clark Fork River expected to hit flood stage Wednesday night. So that was 16 hours ago. So I guess I'm behind times.
Okay, yeah, down through Missoula, that shouldn't affect us hardly at all.
Okay, so my next question was, when you're talking about the safety and the tribal safety and health committee, is that the committee that's dealing with updating our emergency operations plan?
No, the health and safety committee that was developed quite a while ago. In fact, I found the original resolution, I think was in 88 or 89, something like that. But what we are is a group of safety people from each tribal entity, and we talk about safety needs, and also we talk about each facility should have a emergency response plan of some sort or emergency action plan, and that committee will help develop that plan and update them or assist each facility in updating that plan. Brian Crawford is the lead on all that, and he's doing a very good job. This last month, we missed out on our meeting, and I think it was just because we weren't sure with the reorganization of things where our committee is sitting, and we sent a note off to Clayton, and Rick they're gonna find out, I guess, and get back to us and see exactly where we stand.
Okay, looks like there's no other questions. So thank you for your report. We really appreciate these reports. I think I find them really informative.
And I'm very happy to do it for you too. And I'm looking forward to the end of next month too.
Okay, thank you. Have a good
day. Thank you. You too.
Okay, we're running a little bit behind. Rich is up next, page 4 in the packet.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the council. After some communication breakdowns, I did get a chance to talk to Rick Enos, Delphine Bordeaux of Property and Supply, Alyssa Peel of Contracts and Grants, and my supervisor, Clayton Matt. And so today I want to go back to late fiscal year 2019 when we requested a piece of capital equipment, an ice maker. And because of COVID and the complications that followed, it just didn't get done. So we are asking today to get tribal council approval on an ice machine, an ice maker that we can put at Blue Bay and sell ice to the customers and clients, tribal members, campers that are out there at Blue Bay. The low bid that Delphine got for us was Big Sky Restaurant Supply. It's just over the cusp of 5,000. It's 5,375. So I'm just asking for approval today.
Motion, Madam Chair.
Okay, motion by Martin, second by Anita. Any questions? All those in favor? Okay, motion carries unanimous.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council. Have a great Thursday.
Thank you, Rich. Okay, next up we have Jordan Thompson. Good morning, Jordan.
I just ran into Ryan and he was going to present this morning as well, and he's hiding out in Rick's office, so I'm not sure if he's able to hear us or if
They're on.
oh, they're on. Okay.
And Jordan, Ryan's actually going to join you in the council chambers.
All right. Well, that was our opening, so I'm glad he's coming in. Otherwise, I was just going to have to make it up.
Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for setting up a little bit of time for this discussion today. What we wanted to do is just have a little conversation about council roles and responsibilities and going forward, and really kind of taking the next step in the process based on the decisions you've made recently regarding reorganization, and really wanted just to facilitate a conversation, as I said, and I'd asked Jordan to move into this. He's spent a fair amount of time in the education and academic setting, studying various different models out there. He's kind of our resident think tank on some of these kinds of things. So I wanted to see if we can facilitate a discussion in front of him, and then he can kind of take notes and try to bring it back together and help organize some of your thoughts on that. So that's kind of what I'm hoping we can do. We've got, looking up on the horizon, you've got a number of sort of big policies that you've all talked about or asked us to look at, asked us to bring into you for review, to revisit things like the land ordinance, big issues that are on the forefront, like the recent legalization of marijuana in Montana. Those big type of policy issues, for quite some time, those tend to be things that were kind of pushed to the side as we deal with day-to-day, administrative matters and more pressing issues. And so what I think we're understanding from you all is that you want to be able to have a place where that kind of stuff can be brought to the forefront, so you can really think about it, have some good, robust, open discussion about it, hear from stakeholders, and most importantly, your membership, your constituents, so that that can guide you as you make those decisions going forward. So what we want to do is to try to do what we can to support you in that process. So I think what I'm hoping we can do is, like I said, have some discussion and hear from you really on your visions going forward. And one of the things that I have observed in my time here is that this council and past councils before it have really made some really good strides on addressing barriers that exist in a lot of places in Indian country. Just the format of your meetings, for example, is one that I really appreciate. Other tribes have, many tribes have sort of a system where they run by a committee system, where they've got committees that meet every single day, you know, some twice a day, and then they don't have a council meeting except maybe once a month or twice a month. And so they have all these sort of hearings that build up, and you know, it can be really problematic because somebody will come in and talk and you hear one side of the story, and so action starts getting taken on one side of the story, and then a week later somebody else comes in and tells the other side of the story, and then when it finally gets to the council meeting, nobody remembers what the whole fight was about in the first place. But in the meantime, people got defensive, and it's, you know, that kind of process is difficult for carrying out long-term initiatives. And I think the form of organization that past councils set up, where you have, you know, 2 council meetings per week with the opportunity to get business done and motions and passed, resolutions passed, that sort of thing, regularly, without having sort of, you know, roundtable coffee shop discussions solving the world's problems, has been very efficient. And I think that's why you've been able to achieve some of your long-term goals in ways that other folks have not been able to. So I've already got, so I think it's just, you know, the opportunity now is to just even rise to another level up here. So that's kind of my intro. But Jordan, you got anything you wanted to say before we start trying to pull blood from turnips here?
I think Fred.
Fred?
Yeah, Jordan, and Ryan, or is it Brian? No, no. You know, in your introduction of your research, it's kind of almost like identifying what we're not as well, right? I mean, and I'm probably not the authority on this, but I have a little bit of a history, as I always remind council that I do have a little history, and so does Carol, long, you know, from years past. And I keep bringing up a certain individual that was an executive secretary, and now we reorganize, and it looks like that we're working towards maybe coming back to that some sort of a scenario. But what really worked, and you two weren't here either, so I don't think that if you remember this, but what I saw in that position, some of the train wrecks that we've been experiencing this last couple of 2 or 3 years was headed off at the pass by that individual, knowing what our responsibilities for policymakers, right? And we adopt resolutions, but we're not personnel. You know, a lot of the things that we address is what I think personnel should be addressing, and stay out of that sort of a. Well, I could go on other things, but there again. You know, I don't know how you're going to articulate this, but that's what I saw. One of the biggest advantages of having that person in that seat, and I'm not going to mention a name, but some of those train wrecks were avoided by that individual, knowing very well what our roles and responsibilities, and it was headed off right at the, and I don't know if Carol, if you want to chime in on that one or not, but because I know she was, maybe there's a few others that was around since then. But.
So I think that was the whole idea of reorganizing and having a single executive. So if we could go ahead with our discussion.
Sure. So I'm just really happy to be here this morning. As Ryan said, I've gone to a lot of school, and part of that's just because I love thinking about stuff. And so thinking about politics, thinking about law, thinking about business and economic development and what that means. And so Ryan kind of alludes to thinking I have a lot of things up in my bag to help folks think about it. And I like to think that's somewhat true. But one thing I know for certain is I sure like thinking about this stuff, especially organizations and structures and kind of the tribes into the future and what that looks like. There's actually an area of study called future studies. And so I was actually thinking about going back to school because they had a pretty nice program at University of Hawaii dealing with that. I was like, I could spend 2 more years in Hawaii. Didn't, but I think this might be a similar opportunity here to think about what we would like our future to look like as a tribe. So futures theory is kind of like looking, how do you want your future to look like in 25, 50, 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now? Like, what are we set up to look like, and what do we want to look like, and kind of how do we make what we want to look like happen? And so I would like to probably explore that a bit more. I know Shelley, I think, turned me on to design theory, and so I'll like to look into that, but really just listen and kind of see what you guys would like to do, and help facilitate that conversation. I've got my yellow pad and just be scribbling notes all day, and every time we meet, just to try to help you package up what you want to see the future of council and the future of tribes to look like, and how we can make that a reality. So that's what I'm here to do. I think we'd like to have just a introductory conversation today to see what you'd like the future of these conversations to look like. And so I think we'd just like to turn it over to you to hear your thoughts about what you'd like to get out of these conversations and where we'd like to probably end up.
Okay. Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I'd like to figure out the do's and don'ts so I don't get called on the carpet. And what I say, I mean, what I'm trying to say is I'll get a call from a tribal member. I don't mean to get in the weeds, but this is the only way to explain it. I get a call from a tribal member like last night, and it's a water issue. Well, it's water sewer issue. And so I sit down, do an email directing all these people if they could send an application. Is there this available? Is that? And I go down this list and I send it out, but I include Clayton. Is that the proper protocol for me to handle that kind of thing? I was calling Rick every morning, but you know, Rick said yesterday morning, well, I hope this doesn't happen every morning, me calling. So I want to know that I'm not stepping outside of my role as a council member trying to accomplish a tribal member's request and task. And trust me, I will try not to drop the ball for that tribal member, because I'll see it all the way through. I'll make my phone calls and say, housing, where are you at? What's the status? I do that part fine, but I don't want to, if I'm doing that wrong, I want to know that as a political person elected to my position. Is that not something I should do, or how do I do it?
That's a really good
And I got a
comment.
second one too.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want you to.
No, I was just gonna say that's a really good point and a good comment and good question. And I think that's one of the things we'd like you as a group to answer. I don't think we necessarily should tell you what the answer is to that question. And I would like to, I mean, I want to hear your second point as well, but I think one of the things we can talk about is, does that issue, does that beg a larger question of, is there more we can be doing to make sure that tribal members feel like they have a way to navigate their government? You know, do we want to look at having, you know, people who are designated to follow those kinds of issues, or do we want to implement tracking systems to make sure that it's happening? Because, you know, and is it fair for one council member to be responsible for that issue when it's really, you know, organizationally something that needs to be tracked? And so that's, you know, one of the things, you know, we're working on is, you know, getting software and basically tickler systems in place to make sure that we're tracking those types of issues and stuff. But I think that's a great question, and a great question to explore and discuss even further. So, but I don't want to talk much. I want to let you go back to your second
point. And the other
point.
question is, I heard that there was a council member who went and talked to the tribal health director, let's say, and they were talking about things that had happened prior. To me, is that isn't appropriate. What is your thoughts? Is that an inappropriate discussion? I mean, if I went down and talked to the tribal health director, let's say about, let's say process or something of medical bills, I think that's appropriate. But for me to go down and talk to the director about personnel issues in general, I don't think that's appropriate. I think that either comes from the body, or we, like we had a discussion this morning, stay the hell out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So
So you're sort of seeing there's a division between individual council members' interactions with staff.
No, it's more in general.
More in general.
Should that happen?
Right, but I kind of heard you say that there was, there's a sort of the questioning on general issues, and
Yeah.
then there's
Okay.
specific things like personnel related to a particular employee, and you're
Yeah.
kind of seeing that those are sort of two different
Okay.
issues.
And they're both, yeah, I want
And
answers
yeah.
to both.
Okay, okay.
Fred?
A good example of what Carol just brought up, when I was the chairman, are we able to talk? Are we zooming one? Okay. Oh, well, I guess it is. When I was chairman, I got asked by a health director to come and wanted to visit with me. So I did, not knowing that the issue was because he was getting removed. And I ended up having to testify in court just because I went and visited with him. What he articulated that the conversation wasn't just the fact that I went and visited with him. So he come up with this gyration that I was saying something. So then I ended, and the person got removed, but then I ended up in court having to testify that his hearsay and what we actually talked about. So that put me and so that's a good reason why not to in that situation.
And so having some clearly articulated
Right.
what the law is in this area and where legal liability could be triggered would be helpful if you had that sort of, okay?
So
That's really
last
good.
night I got a call from a tribal member whose family member had a health issue, and she was wondering if there was a health advocate, someone that could go help in this situation. So I called Jonathan, no answer. So I called Chelsea. Both of them called me back within minutes. But those are the kind of things I think we still need to be able to do, because tribal members are asking for that help. And what's that? Yeah, you just guide them to the right resource. I had asked quite a while ago that we put a list of departments and, titles and everything in there in the Charcusta, so that to direct people to specific individuals. And I think housing was the only one that really had a big ad that said, this person deals with this person deals with that. Other than that, we have a, centerfold in our Charcusta, but people don't know what specifically those jobs are. And so, if they're going to reach out to me after hours, this was after hours. And so, I'm obviously going to direct them to the right person. So those are the kind of things that I think we all get calls about.
Mhm.
Rick and then Anita?
Madam Vice Chair, you can, I'll defer to you if you want to jump in.
Just real quickly, I had a comment on that. To me, that is our job, is to guide them, if to that right person. I think where we're seeking help is to make sure that the issue gets resolved to the right person, and then it gets resolved and it ain't back in our lap in 2 or 3 weeks that it was just forgotten, an email was sent. And so to me, I certainly hope that we continue to do that for the membership, is to guide them. And then it's up to the management to make sure that that task is took care of.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carol, you said, and I just want to clarify, sometimes I'm tongue in cheek and it doesn't exactly translate. Ultimately, what I was getting at is it would be great if we were functioning well enough that there didn't need to be calls from the membership to the council to get something done. And that's, I think, the goal for all of us is, and that's why customer service was one of the highest priorities, increasing it and basically taking the membership's experience with the government from a place of potential frustration to a place of satisfaction. Maybe not always satisfying the specific requests. I want to be clear that that's probably never going to happen, but at least leaving the interaction feeling heard and understanding why there was a no, if there was a no, not just sort of being left in limbo. At least that's the goal that I want to try and effectuate. I think it's going to take a little bit of time. In the meantime, I do not in any way want to discourage council or the membership from using all avenues that they have. But I do think it's important that when we look at individual circumstances, we try to address those individual circumstances, but not forget to sort of step back and see the forest for the trees, if that makes sense. Like, why are people coming and interacting with whatever department or program and then feeling the need that they have to go up the chain? And is there something structurally we can do? Is there something just initiatives throughout the organization that we can put into place and track and monitor? And I think to some degree answering those questions with support from the staff is one area where I think council should engage. And as Ryan mentioned, the way I think we can help address that aspect is by doing a better job of tracking those issues and being able to see the patterns and actually spend some time thinking about what part of the process is breaking down. So I think that is that's something we can definitely work on. I've heard quite a bit of like, it would be nice to know where the guardrails are. And I think we could help maybe provide some input there. But one of the things that I think for the long-term benefit of the organization and for council itself is we want to do that in a way that doesn't have it come from us, if you will. So how can we facilitate where the no's and where the yeses are based on kind of your overall vision? And I think you've set a trajectory there with the reorganization and some of the personnel ordinance changes and things. So understanding, I guess, in your ideal world, how would you interact is kind of the baseline question that we're looking for your input on, and would love to hear from everybody on that, either now or it can be an email or something. And then after we get those responses, I think we can come back and Jordan can put all of his brain power to work with all of those different theories and present maybe some options or some guidelines.
Can I ask a couple questions on that
Go ahead,
topic
Ryan.
we're kind of on? So do you think, what would be helpful in kind of the scenario you started describing, and then I think kind of got carried on by a couple others in here. In those scenarios, what's the most frustrating part of that process? Is it finding somebody getting a hold of a director or department head or something like that? Or is it identifying who the right person is? What's the really frustrating part of that?
Madam Chair.
Carol?
When somebody calls and says, Carol, I can't get a hold of so-and-so, can you call them and have them call me? Or that's my response. I will personally call them, get a hold of them or somebody and have them call you back. And then I have to call back and make sure that they call them back. That is the most frustrating thing. And I'm thinking, that's why I want a process to know how many people don't pick up their messages. I mean, within, I think 2 to 3 hours, a person should at least return a phone call. I think that's appropriate. So I want to know in this organization who does not return phone calls. I can tell you lately, Brian Crawford never got a call back. I can name, oh, are we on? I should not be calling out names, but you know, it just bothers me. But I did get a hold of somebody else and he responded, and maybe that's why he didn't call me back. But you know, that's so irritating to know that I have to, as a leader, have to call somebody to have them call. So if we could have phone calls forwarded to cell phones, if we're paying for a cell phone, I think that phone call should go to that cell phone. And if you're at home and you're not returning phone calls, that is maddening to me when I know that that employee is allowed to stay home and work all day and doesn't call somebody back. That's maddening.
Yeah.
And it's maddening for the person.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because if you just, what I've been told, if you just give them a number and they call, they can't get through either. I mean, we don't know if the person's on leave. Maybe that's a message I should say today on so-and-so date, I'm on leave or gonna be on leave or I'm sick.
Okay, that's really good, really good. Any others? Any other areas where people find themselves super frustrated in those processes?
Ellie?
I guess for me, and looking back over the last year, being a new person when I first came in, I had no clue and I don't feel like, I knew I could reach out to people and just ask, what should I do with this one? What should I do with this one? But that was even kind of frustrating. But knowing who I can go to for different situations, if it's a power outage, if it's a clogged pipe, if it's emergency medical stuff, but almost a list of resources or a person who, you know, I've had to call Kelly Parker a lot, who is amazing. And even if it's not in her field, she'll figure out what she can do to help. And so she's been super helpful to me if I just don't know and need someone to reach out to. But I think just a better orientation on how to deal with people who have concerns.
How to navigate the system and
Yeah.
Fred?
There again, how I would again like to see it, and it goes back to some history, that I get a call, or Carol gets a call, or somebody gets a call, that there's a sewer problem. I call Rick. Rick knows our organization. He calls housing. There's one person, then, you know, maybe in a few days you could do a follow-up, you know, did you get there, or either we'll get a follow-up, a call that says, you know, nobody responded yet. So, but we have that one person that we could go to. The way it works now is, you know, each individual, and Carol probably gets a lot of calls because she's probably responding, but she's doing she's taking on the responsibilities, I think, that should be here. And I think in past history, that's why it worked. And that individual knows enough about our constitution, our bylaws, you talked about, you're kind of a bookworm, you research all this stuff. That's what I'd like to see again, in that knowledge that I saw in the past, that person knew that stuff, and again, and it just worked. I don't know. We have the hardest time going back, it seems to sometimes, but yeah, rather than each individual, you know, responding to the department heads and.
Lynn?
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the council, and thank you guys this morning for this conversation. You know, there's going to be a lot of flaws as we move forward with this new reorganization, but we really need to be careful and making sure that there's not going to be a disconnect with the membership, specifically our elders. And as many of you all know out there, when an elder calls us, the last thing they want to hear is, oh, well, you need to talk to so-and-so. You need to call so-and-so. They don't want to hear that. So we have that obligation, not only to them, but to all the membership, to making sure that whatever is being requested, that it's getting followed up on and getting done correctly in a timely manner. So I just wanted to just mention that because you know, I understand why we need to start this new system because of the fact that there's some issues that take up a lot of time, and we need to keep our executive staff or our entire tribal staff accountable to the membership, to making sure, because we're always telling our membership, employees work for you too, you know. And so this new system will get us in that direction. But I just wanted to just quickly mention something too. You know, I noticed in the past we've had tribal members coming in wanting to visit with council, and we've asked them to go through the process first before they come here. But there are many times where these membership just want to come in and state their business with us to make sure that we all have an understanding. But during that process, what I've also been told is when they come in here, they feel intimidated. And I think it's just because of the atmosphere of how things are set up, because we're looking down on you guys, okay? So I just want to make a suggestion. This little platform here, let's raise this so when the membership comes in, they're looking down on us. You know, and I think that may change the way they're thinking or not, but I just wanted to throw that out there. So thank you.
That's how it is in Coeur d'Alene.
Yeah.
The council is lower than the people.
Okay, thank you.
So just to make sure we got that. So I think what I heard you saying is it important to you to have a forum where that's easily accessible for membership to come in and be heard. And okay, got that. Right, great. Go ahead.
I do like the idea of having one person. I still want to be able to speak to membership when somebody calls me. I want to hear them out. I want to, it'd be helpful for me instead of trying to navigate, who am I going to email? Who do I need to CC? Who do I need to call? I don't want to inundate Rick with it. I feel like he's got much bigger things to worry about. But if I could call one person who maybe we just hire to just build those kinds of things, I can call them, give them the information. They can be in contact with my person, and they would have all that information about resources and who they can reach out to help. And at least we're doing our part. We're hearing people out. We're making the connection, and then that person can just maybe let us know that it's been taken care of, or we have confidence, I guess, at that point that it's being taken care of because that's what they're hired solely to do. And then that also provides that person an opportunity to track information. If you get notified that 3 of us contacted you this week and said, so-and-so is not answering his phone or returning calls to this person and membership is frustrated, then we can have somebody, maybe Rick at that point then say, there's an issue here, we need to fix it.
So what you're describing is something more than just a dispatcher. It's somebody who would actually follow it to the end and make sure, and then be able to track it and then report back. And then also report just from like Rick was saying, from a pattern scenario, if we're seeing the same thing happening over and over again, that can be addressed.
Yeah. It would also be helpful in identifying what kinds of things are we seeing all the time. Is it people who are homeless? Is it people trying to get into treatment and they can't? Is it power bills unable to be paid? We can start tracking all of the issues and find out where our gaps are. And taking bigger looks if it's something that stands out above everything else.
Great.
Carol?
Yeah, I found one avenue that I think that really works well for when people lose family members or, you know, family in the community, is I found the easiest way to handle those is, because usually they want wake kits, they want their check, they want this and that. Work with the funeral home. The funeral home will drive that process, is the easiest I found. I mean, at one point I was helping doing all this stuff, and now they've taken it upon themselves to make, you know, to do all the work that needs to be done, because Foster's and Lakes, I think they do very well with Irma. I haven't heard any problems with Lakes, but I know Foster's does really well with on those issues. So I think those are pretty smooth, and I get a lot of those calls. So I'm sure all of us do, though. I mean, not just me.
So one thing I get frustrated with is, so for example, I got a call from an elder last night, has like 3 different concerns. So I do an email to the different people that it affects, the different departments, and then usually I'll copy their supervisor on it. Well, a couple times in the past, instead of emailing, I've just talked to the supervisor of the program that was responsible, and they'll like not do it. They'll like, well, what did you want me to do? Or they're kind of like pushing it back on me. So I'm thinking I'm going to the top person responsible in the chain so that they'll, you know, delegate the work down. So that's one frustration I have. And I think maybe with the new reorganization, this may be taken care of. But I wanted to talk about that walk-in process. So that form was developed, and it was basically to see if if tribal members had gone to the departments, you know, if they even know which department to go to or which individual. So I think it was kind of a filtering process. It's not like we're trying to shut anybody out. It's just, you know, did it go to the appropriate staff? Because we can be here till noon dealing with, you know, walk-ins of people that just want to go on and on. And then I think another thing that I think we really need is kind of well, I think we're on the right track to, you know, setting our council agendas, but, you know, what is agenda worthy, if you know what I mean? Is it some things that are for information only? Is it, because sometimes those things should go to the department, you know, I can think of one recently where someone was requesting to come in, but it really wasn't a council matter. It was more a department matter. You know, they're the ones that need the information, not really council per se. So I think if there's, you know, we talk about us being the policymakers and, you know, revising codes and doing this a certain level of work. Yeah, it's not that we don't want to hear from the membership. I think about other tribes that I've been involved with. When I worked on the Nez Perce Reservation, their council was an executive committee, and every quarter, I think it was, they would have a general council where the membership comes in with resolutions and whatnot. They're, you know, totally different setup, but, you know, we have every Tuesday and Thursday where we welcome our membership. So I just think that we need to really kind of clarify that process for ourselves and for the membership.
Madam Chair, just to get council thinking, maybe for the next iteration of this conversation to some degree, I do think there are there are going to be some areas where part of that solution is empowering the staff further down the chain to, and it'll be delicate, but I think part of what it might entail is as we start to gather these issues and start to see patterns and things, and maybe we already know intuitively what some of them are, but are there places where we are rigid in our rules, our regs, that basically require a lot of services to rise up to council in order for them to be addressed? I think that is going to be a big part of how we tackle customer service and the ability for things not to have to come to you. Not that we don't want people to have the venue, but normally that's a week, 2 weeks after they've tried to engage. And if we can shorten that time frame, I think that might be something that would be beneficial. I think council's comfort level with that and desire to sort of push that down is something that would be good for each of you to think about as we go forward.
Carol?
Yeah, I think one area is social services. None of us up here have a degree in so, well, I guess I should not say that. Most of us don't have those kind of qualifications to, to even listen to what is being said. And I think Madam Chair has done really well keeping that stuff where it belongs. And so I think in the future, for future councils, is not to entertain those issues. Those things belong with social services and the people who have the qualifications to deal with it. And I think this mapping process that the KC family is doing with them, every step of the way, it shows where they're at in the process of when a child goes to foster care or is being removed. They'll be able to show the family where they're at in the process and what the next steps are, either way, good or bad. And so I think that's one thing. And then the other thing was, I lost it.
That's okay.
It was important though, no.
You think about, we'll come back. Fred?
Well, I think the success and the failure is going to be based on whether the issues get addressed. Going back to what Lynn said, I never want to think that we would discourage our membership. In fact, for me, I feel good when people call me, okay? And I've said this to Mike, I feel good when I get a call from somebody from Hot Springs, that's not even in the district, but they feel comfortable enough with you as a council person, because we do represent everybody, that they're calling you. And I'm sure Carol feels the same way, or Shelley, that the calls that you get are based on people who they know that you accommodate them. So the success and the failure is going to be, maybe their issue isn't going to be resolved, but they're gonna somebody's gonna take attention to it and follow through. And again, kind of what Ellie had mentioned, what I think would be, again, for you, Rick, a little bit, if the calls are as such that you get overloaded, that's up to you to hire staff to follow through on that. But I look at you as the executive officer and the council, we say we're 24/7, and that's, well, if you take on that job and you want to hear 24/7, but at least you pass it off. And the success and the failure is going to be whether it gets addressed. So it gets channeled to housing, to social services, to law and order. That's where the success is, that we just get it. You're going to tell us whether, but anyway.
So, and the important thing is that when we get those calls is to answer them in a timely manner.
And then one more. And then the other thing is, you know, even though that we do have technology, I still think a phone call is important. You know, because, you know, you're saying you're texting, or not texting, emailing people. Folks like me, don't return emails too often, but anyway, a phone call is the really, because then you're talking to the person, you know that they're not reading their email.
Martin and then Carol?
I think Carol's before me, but.
Go ahead.
So a couple of frustrations I have with this. One is when we need to make a council decision and a group chat is sent out and no one responds. And these are timely issues. So that's an internal issue that we could just, you know, fix real quickly. The other issue I think that we have throughout the organization is people not willing to admit that they don't know what they're doing and not willing to lean on the people that do. I think that there's this fear of repercussions that people, for the lack of feeling stupid, they'll just plod along and make things harder on themselves and reinvent the wheel when you got someone who's got a bunch of knowledge or expertise in that area, and they're afraid to ask them because sometimes they're a subordinate or sometimes they're younger than them and they feel threatened by them. And so I think that, you know, having people feel secure in their jobs is important. You know, leaning on the people that actually have the knowledge, you know, is something that we used to do a lot. A lot of our institutional knowledge is leaving because of retirement or whatever reason, but I think that we have people in power that don't want to admit that they don't know how to do something or aren't comfortable doing it. And so instead they spend hours and hours and days doing something when they could have just gone to someone and they're like, oh, hey, this is how you do it. Real simple, done. So I think, you know, that's a culture issue within the, you know, more not work culture issue, not a cultural issue. So thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up on that real quick? So do you see that more between departments or within like one department or division? Or is it more of a, people aren't reaching out across the complex or next door to them, do you think?
I think it's just,
I
think it's both. I think that, you know, we have this weird, because I've seen it here where we got a member that comes in and they have an issue and then you start realizing, oh, these are overlapping issues. And then we facilitate, okay, we get, you know, DHRD and then we get housing and we get all these people facilitated in a room when they could have just called each other and dealt with it at their level. You know, and that goes, I think, you know, a lot of people get into jobs or they hire people that maybe they don't train well. So they give someone an assignment, they don't know how to do it. Either that person won't admit to their supervisor they don't know how to do it and they just don't get it done, or they do it halfway or whatever. And it just feels like there's this weird, I think we discussed the mentality that we have, and that's really prevalent in the work environment here at the tribe. There's this fear of not knowing and that affecting like your job performance. You know, I mean, I'm one of those people where if I don't know something, I'll just ask, and I don't care if I look stupid or not. You know, that's how you learn. But, you know, we got people who, you know, are assigned something, they have no idea how to do it. So rather than ask for clarification or ask, you know, someone that's maybe been through this before, they just plod along and you know, the job that should take a day takes 2 weeks or a year or 7 years. So thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Carol?
Yeah, I think one thing is cross-training. That's kind of what I think I heard Martin say. And then also collaboration between departments. that they seem to have to come in here to be told that, you know what, you need to work with so-and-so and so-and-so, so this gets resolved. And I think that's what something else Martin said, but the other thing is, council answering the question. When you get a call, and I don't want to ever portray that I don't want calls or anything, because to me, I enjoy them even on the weekends. But I think when council's able to answer the question, we need to answer it. We don't need to say, unless we're not clear. But if we have the answer, tell the membership. Sometimes I see myself, okay, well, I don't want to give them the bad news, so I'll, transfer them to Rick or whoever. I can usually do that. I try to, speak in a fashion, in a manner that doesn't sound awful. So I think it's important for us to do that job also. And yeah, the collaboration, I've seen that with tribal credit, housing, and education. All of them, they can work so much better together if they would just talk. And I think that's really coming out of the plan of operations and the discussion with the board over there, that yeah, credit could do a little more, education could probably do a little more. But we got to remember, we're just coming out of COVID too. And so there was a lot of pullback and not a lot of discussion. So there is reasons why some of this is taking place, but good discussion.
Yeah, we sort of have a visual of it right now with the partitions in between all of you. It's like we literally can see it now, except right there. Yeah. No, that's really helpful. Ask another question here. I get the sense that at least all of you, I don't think Councilman Matt said anything yet. Looking for you when you're ready. But I get the sense that, what I'm hearing is that, you all want to be very committed, and one of your top priorities is being accessible to your constituents and having an ability to pass along their concerns and have a response to those, if it's a question or if it's something, an action that needs to be taken, that there's a path for quickly getting that resolved, and then hearing back on it, making sure it's tracked so that we can do something about it. One of the things that I've also kind of heard peppered in there a little bit is the kind of the process of it. And then we talked a little bit about the walk-in process and others, but what do you all think? In some ways you kind of all have your own style about how you go about dealing with outreach that you may get. Do you think where do you value, would it be better if there was the same process that everybody had to follow and it was pretty rigid, like you have to call a specific number, you as council members have to call a specific number or type an email? Or do you think it should be more, each individual council member should sort of be able to run that process in a way that they're the most comfortable with? Like Councilman Matt said, I don't like to text or email, and so I'd prefer not to do that. But I know, some of you are very prolific texters, others are messenger fans. And what do you think about that? Is there a need for that, or do you think it should be more flexible?
Fred?
See, Ryan, and you're kind of hitting on what I said to start off with. Maybe it's just as much important to identifying what we're not. We're not technology proficient folks. And I'm probably at the end of that line. Martin is laughing. And when I say looking at somebody who is familiar, what is our obligation? 2 meetings a week, right? If you look in what our obligation is, 2 meetings a week. Is the chairman's meetings? No, that's not in there. Is the Wednesday Teams meetings? No, it's not in there. Is the Friday's special meetings in? No, it's 2 meetings a week. And then, not that, all of us want to improve on our abilities to use technology. And I really appreciate Martin stepping up. See, this COVID's taught us some things too. COVID has really taught us some things. It's taught us to kind of come out of our box a little bit, Martin. At least I can get on the computer, and I really appreciate that he stepped up. But is that Martin's responsibility as a council? It's nice that he knew that, because, he provided it. But it should have been our technology shop that should have been stepping up and doing these. not that he mind doing it. You know, again, I praise him because he just showed us that, you know, he's a really technology driven and has done us a tremendous job during COVID, but should he have been doing it? Probably not. So, so like I say, sometimes the question is what we are not, as well as what we should be, or what are we obligated? 2 meetings a week. And that's even changed over. When I was across the street over there, it used to be 1 meeting. Then occasionally it was a meeting on a Thursday. And that's evolved, but so, and maybe maybe we should throw in the chairman's meeting, you know, as that obligation. But when we run for council, we're obligated, if you look at how it's written, 2 meetings a week. And then so when these things are talked about during these other side meetings, then people like me that don't show up getting assigned, but you know, get kind of a little bit ribbed for not doing that. So, but so anyway, so just play with that one a little bit too.
So I think that is something that needs to be clarified. It's my understanding that we're salaried and that means 24/7. It doesn't mean 2 meetings a week. Those are the official council meetings, but we're on call for, you know, the tribal membership for as far as accessibility. And because those committee meetings were, you know, throughout the ages, I guess, scheduled at different times, you know, different days. You know, we were on a pretty good schedule of, you know, the second, third, and fourth Mondays of the month. You know, if we need to move those to council days, you know, we can move that direction. But again, it's that accessibility and being, you know, I don't think that with the salaries, that it's 2 meetings a week. I think it's when you're a salaried person and when you're on tribal council that you should be available. That's just my understanding of it. Charmel, did you have something?
I do. Thank you very much. And just quick, yeah, sorry, I jumped in kind of mid-meeting or mid-discussion. And I love this discussion. And I guess I want to back up first of all and say congratulations to Ryan Ruschi, because yesterday I was relating or catching up a little bit with the call with the chairwoman, and I guess I had the information provided, Ryan, that you filled a position with chief of staff, and I don't know how I missed that that announcement, but congratulations. And it really brings, I guess, a priority request to mind. If you guys have already started on this, it seems like this is what we're talking about possibly, and that would be to create kind of an operating procedures type of a guidance for the tribal council, something that can help kind of standardize the roles and expectations, the way that that decisions are processed through the tribal council, kind of a more clarity on what it means to answer to the tribal council, if that means answering only directly to the chairperson, or whether that means a full discussion of tribal council, whether that's just 2 days a week or 24/7 like it's being discussed right now. And as far as the way that that's communicated, I think that's a good point to be made. And it makes me consider, you know, like, what are the expectations of tribal council's response time? You know, when is something critically, when is a decision or a response critically needed, like right now? What is the urgency? How do we distinguish between the true emergencies and those things that can be answered when the council convenes. So whether that means we have a daily morning meeting, you know, so that we can catch up on those things that need to be decided. Because a lot of times we do get text messages. I had my work phone turned off for the last 5 days probably because I was trying to have some time away and PTO, and I turned it on this morning and it just kind of went wild with all sorts of messages catching up. So, you know, the chatting, text messages, emails, there are very few direct conversations outside of regular meeting times. So I think that'd be, excuse me, I'll wait. Thank you. I think that would be something to talk about is, you know, like what kind of emergencies are going to warrant immediate responses from every council person, and how should that be managed? Should that be managed by a daily meeting time? Maybe we meet from, you know, 7 or 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. every day. I don't know if that's an expectation that the membership has, that every council person should be you know, involved in all of the conversations, or whether we just delegate everything to the chair and the executive officer, and that we get, you know, informed at chair meetings and on council agendas or whatever. But and then the other thing that I was thinking about, just listening to the whole salaried conversation, it's my understanding that only the chairperson is paid at a full-time salary. And I thought that the rest of the tribal council positions are established according to halftime. And I think that's reflected in the pay schedule that we're currently on. But overall, you know, as far as Ordinance 69D and the way that we handle salaried positions, I think we have positions that are paid according to a salary schedule, but they're not truly exempt. And in other words, they're expected to be there for 40 hours a week, and they're salaried. So the discussion today, just a moment ago, was to suggest that, you know, salaried people aren't on a schedule, but that isn't really how we handle people who are paid according to a salary within our organization. So I think clarifying that and making that consistent would be probably helpful to a lot of people, so that we can understand what those expectations are. Thank you.
That's great. That was actually going to be my next question: is what would all you think about having you know, an end product for at least some of these things on roles and responsibilities is actually written down? And I'm sort of hearing sort of two different kind of concepts. One is like really roles, responsibilities, like you have to attend 2 meetings a month or you get booted out the door, versus expectations that you have for each other, more of conduct, code of conduct kind of. This is, if we're going to work together as a cohesive unit, these are the expectations that we have of us as individual members of the group. What folks' feelings on that?
Carol, just before we get into that, do we have to change the Constitution in order to, or the bylaws in order to do what you're saying?
So I think the council can govern itself within the limits of the Constitution. So you can't go out and say, you know, without changing the Constitution, you can't reduce the requirements that are contained in there. But you can definitely regulate yourselves. May not allow for constitutional punishment or ramifications, but you can, you know, you do have some flexibility there to govern yourselves.
I think we all realize, you know, we work 5 days a week and most of us 24/7, 365. But in the Constitution or in the bylaws right now, it says January or a Friday meeting at 9 AM. And it doesn't say anything about Tuesday or Thursday, but I thought there was somewhere that was changed to reflect those meetings, meeting change.
We can definitely get that for you for our next session, so you've got exactly what it is in front of you. And that's another thing, I guess we didn't really talk about that at the top of this. If there are questions like that where we can just go do the research and get the information to you during this process, I think that's, yeah.
Excuse me, Madam Chair, this book is to me the Bible. And if it was updated, I would so much appreciate it. I got my new 69D in here and other things, but I don't know if the whole book is complete. But I tell you, I use it often. Ellie?
Right, my comment is going back a little bit when you were talking about different styles and how people respond to folks. Back to having one person in place, another reason that may be helpful is departments, I think, have a hard time when you're hearing from 10 different people and we communicate with them differently. And I think sometimes they feel like they're being told you need to do this. And that authority is not always, it's not a one-person decision, but I think having the one person that we go to with our issues and then that person's working with those different departments, you remove that feeling of like, I'm directing you to do this. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. I think, so just to take that another step further, so a step in the process that sort of checks the box on whether this is something that requires full council to take some action, and then a process for getting that on the agenda so that it can be swiftly addressed by council.
Bing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, Ryan. But anyway, it's true what Ellie just said, and there are a lot of people, constituents in our districts that will just call you, nobody else, because they know that you're going to do something for them, and we call the departments or whoever is in charge or supposed to be in charge to do things for them, and we don't get an answer, and it's like, well, this is who you got to call. A lot of times I'll call Carol to find out who's in charge, and she'll tell me, or she'll tell me, okay, I'll just go ahead and call them for you. But last time I was on council, I might have got in trouble over it, but I didn't say anything. But my good old friend, God bless her soul, Louise Dasso, was always calling me. I mean, 6 o'clock in the morning every day, it was a call from her. And she needed a lot of work done on her place, and she did get a lot of work done on her place. Bathtub replaced, and sinks and floors and everything, you name it. She had to have it replaced. And she wouldn't get any help from anybody. So one time her sewer was plugged up, and she called and needed it. And nobody did anything for her. So I called my friend over here across the street, and I knew he was on Indian preference, and he did a lot of work for the tribe, and I asked him if he'd come and do it for her, and oh yeah, I'll come and do it for her. So he did come over here, and he went up there and he pumped her septic tank for her. But it was, like I say, he was on Indian preference and was paid for and whatnot. But there's times like that to this day that I wish we could still do that. That way there, we could make sure that the damn work got done or is getting done. Besides having to count on these individuals to call them and to say, okay, we'll get on it, and nothing happens. Just like we've got a place up at Arley right now, issues with a lot of problems at the Powell grounds. Here yesterday, we went down there. The damn water was running all over hell. We had a broken pipe, and we knew that. We had these issues with all this water, and it needs it needs to be, the lines need to be redone completely because there's so much sand in that water up there in those lines. It's just plugging them lines up and it's breaking them. And so spigots out there where their campgrounds are, they're breaking, they're busting, breaking, you know. And that's really frustrating. I mean, because we've been doing this for a couple of years now with nothing being done up there. But, you know, and the same thing with down at Tribal Health. I put in a work order. Martin was commenting about it. Ellie was commenting about the damn walking tracks. They got roots growing out of the walking track down on the north end of that track in Mission. And I put a work order in it probably 4 or 5 years ago. Still the same way. You know, and it gets frustrating from the people when they need something done and they can't get it done right now. You know, and it's, you know, and we got to go through all these channels just to see if we can get done, and it don't happen. And I hope Rick, you know, is going to be able to help out with that problem. But it's going to be a lot more work on his shoulders to see if this work gets done. Mm-hmm. And we get calls, like you say, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, we get calls because something is going on with these people, you know, and they want it done. They want to see that this work gets done, you know, and listen to what Freddie was saying, you know, and whatnot, you know. Hell, if I could go do it, I'd go do it for them, you know, just to make sure that work gets done for them so they can do or use whatever they need to do, you know. But it's it gets really frustrating because, you know, we get the calls and nothing there or nobody there to do it for them, or they have to wait or go through the proper channels and make sure that they qualify for it, you know. And that's another big issue of mine, is that qualification issue, you know, with these some of these departments. You got to qualify to be able to get anything done, or you're not qualified, you know. And it's just by listening to everybody talk here, you know, and a lot of things that they say is hits the nail right on the head, but still it's being kind of tossed around and not really knowing what's going to happen, you know. But me, I'd like to just see, you know, where we're able to get the darn thing done right now, where the people is not going to be on our case about it, you know, and we're the ones that catch hell over it.
Yeah, there are some things that just need to get done and don't need to have 7 months of hearings to figure out what the problem is. You just need, okay. Yeah, great.
Anita?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I didn't like been sitting up here listening, and I think of what the tribal membership, and probably one of my hardest critics is the person I live with, but we have to remember who put us here. And it's the tribal membership. And when we quit listening to them, it's time to throw in the paper. We have to be accessible, and regardless of what we put on paper, I never want to be at that point that I'm not listening. That's who put us here. And that's who we're working for every day. So I don't mind 7 days a week. That's what I signed up for, but regardless, we all have to take that responsibility, you know, that we are 7 days a week. And if someone does call, we do the best job that we can do and try to get whatever issue taken care of. And what's frustrating is when you've turned it over to that individual and thought it was took care of, and 2 or 3 weeks later, you get a call from that tribal member saying, well, nothing was ever done. So I agree with Ellie in the way of having some kind of tracking mechanism, that it was done. And like everybody else, some people just tend to call that individual, you know. There's 9 others they can call, but they just feel more comfortable even coming in this room, and I can remember being an employee and how intimidating it was to come in. So, it's hard to bring your issues up. So just that comment. Thank you.
Ellie?
Anita, you just made a good point too. Another benefit to the one-person contact would be that if somebody reaches out to, say, me, and they're not happy with my response, or I'm sorry, we can't help you because you're refusing to take a drug test to get this assistance, they're gonna call Anita, or they can call Lynn. Having that one person, they can say, oh, Lynn's already brought this to my attention, so, you know what I mean? It helps avoid 10 phone calls being made to 10 different people if they're not happy with the response. I am also interested, I guess, in the discussion about what our work schedule is. I don't know how we possibly work 2 days a week. That just is a crazy thought to me when, I mean, some days it feels like you can't even check your email until 11 o'clock at night. It's just, and I know some of the things that some of us take on are maybe special interest stuff, and that might contribute, I know, for me to my schedule, but I guess, I don't know. I personally feel like we're elected to do this. We do what we can, and that there's no time constraint on what that looks like. We're available, and I do like the idea of maybe putting some of the other meetings, now that our schedules might clean up a little bit with council, taking the budget committee meetings, the lands committee meetings, and maybe moving those to some days when we can do that. I appreciate that, just because then I feel like it's another day for me to schedule the other meetings I need to have, or to be able to check my email during the day and not take it home at night, And I guess there's also, I feel like the misconception with our membership that we do only work 2 days a week. And that's absolutely not true. We're saying now that we're meeting on Mondays, we're meeting on Wednesdays. We've had field trips on Fridays. And so I'm glad that that's clarified, that we're not just 2 a days as it is now, but thanks.
Carol?
Yeah, I thought Ellie made a really good point, but I want to stress that when a council member does call, let's say, for instance, dire need, and they'll ask, are you asking to waive policy, or are you directing me to waive policy? That's not what I'm asking. I'm telling you what the needs are. So, and then it's up to you to figure out what you can do for that staff person. And that means you check to make sure they haven't received it. You check their reference, do whatever you need to do, but never, and it's a question I always get asked, are you telling me directing me to do something that is not within policy? And I don't think that question should ever go to a council member unless it comes from this body, so I don't think that question should be raised to a council member, because it kind of opens the door. Well, yeah, of course, I want you to give them 1,000 instead of 800, but I don't think we do that. But I'm just saying it's important policy is adhered to unless it comes from the body that it's changed or waived.
So I want to go back to something Bing talked about was, I guess it's the non-responsiveness of the departments. Part of that comes from our 4-day work week. People don't just have emergencies Monday through Thursday, 7 to 5:30. There's a couple departments that I think tribal health now is on 5-day weeks, but even, I think it was back when we had like a COVID hotline, that was like work week only. And if I have an emergency, it might be Friday night at 6 o'clock, half an hour after everybody clocked out. So I think that's an inherent issue, is that 4-day work week. And I know that's probably not very popular thing to say, but it's the truth. And then the other thing is, when I first got on council, I established an office on Fridays in my district. And people were lined up, sometimes just to visit. Sometimes, you know, I had a regular visitor every Friday, then it turned into 2 or 3 every Friday. And so I started having to make appointments. So people weren't waiting an hour to talk to me because I'm not going to shoo this elder out of the office because, you know, that was her social hour with me and, you know, bringing up a lot of, you know, things. So I think that might be a potential alternative to, you know, having to come here 5 days a week, you know, maybe establishing those local venues for council to have hours. And then the last thing I want to just throw out there is there are programs that have eligibility requirements based on the funding source. And so, and this tribe is very big in that, you know, we provide a lot of services to, you know, some of the membership that needs that, if it's public assistance or assistance of any kind. And so there's times when I question myself about certain requests. Is that a tribal government responsibility? Or is it a personal responsibility? Or is it a family responsibility? You know, because if you follow our traditional values, you know, there's, and I'll just give you a really kind of crazy example is somebody 2 years in a row, 2 winters in a row needed, their family got free wood delivered to them. And she was requesting someone to chop the wood for them. And we don't do that. You know, we deliver what we deliver. So I reached out to a young man in the community and he was able to chop her wood for her, you know. So apparently they didn't have any family nearby that could do that. But I just sometimes question, where do you draw the line on tribal government responsibility and personal, family, or community, you know, responsibility versus the government? So, Martin?
Madam Chair, I think to that point, and we're talking about schedules and whatever, a lot of what we do is on our weekends, because departments are closed. I mean, the example, a couple of weeks ago, there was an issue on a Thursday afternoon about someone doing something that violated policy, and without getting into what it was, you know, they were doing things they shouldn't be doing. And so the department head took it upon themselves to email it out and tell us how much, you know, how many bad things were happening. And he would send someone down there Monday. And this is Thursday afternoon. And so me being who I am, I went and checked it out. And apparently by Monday, the person had burned a lot of what the evidence would have been and made it look all nice and fine. And, you know, it's like, I've never seen any pictures of it. I took pictures of it, but it's like those kind of things. Like, you know, I feel like every department should have someone on call every weekend, or at least a contact number of someone who could potentially help you, because things that arise during the weekend, you know, we get the calls because no one else can, and our numbers are published. And you know, department heads or people don't answer their phones on the weekend. I get that a lot, you know, like, why do they even have a phone? And so those are the things that I think that we do a lot of. We do a lot of cleaning up for, I'll say it, for our employees not doing their jobs. I think that if we had a more efficient, you know, workplace, people felt secure in their jobs, you know, we could alleviate some of this. But everyone, you know, I mean, it's Tribal Friday today. Look in the parking lot. Look at how many cars are gone. You know, it's nice out there. Yeah, let's, you know, take the weekend off. Let's start our weekend on Thursday. Let's go Monday through Wednesday. You know, that leaves how many days of no response? So efficiency is something that I love and I preach. getting jobs done quickly and efficiently and done correctly and in a good way. You know, the thing with the walking path, I'll bring it up. We had a tribal elder fall and break her knee cap, have to have surgery for the walking path in R.Lee around the community center. I feel like that should be an emergency. I feel like that should be top priority, you know, preventative maintenance of our buildings. I mean, I'm looking at cracks and paint peeling, and you go outside and you look at, you know, our building should be the most beautiful building, and you pull up over there and it's like, holy Christ, who forgot to do the yard work this last 4 years? And they're easy targets to pick. But the other thing that we got to look at is public perception. You know, we are at the forefront of what we are the ones that represent this tribe. So I feel like we need to put our best face forward. We are setting the example for our membership, and to say that we come here, you know, a couple days a week, maybe, you know, what does that send? I mean, I feel like if we are truly setting the policy that we expect our membership and our employees to follow, then we sure as hell better be setting that high standard that we expect our members to follow. And so, you know, this big org change and everything else, I'm so excited about it because I feel like it could make our workplace a lot healthier. But there's going to be a lot of growing pains. And one thing that I've learned throughout my working, supervising, things like that, when you start holding people accountable, they start pointing fingers back and asking you, well, why don't you have to work 5 days a week? Why don't you have to be on call? You know, or they just continue on their bad ways and don't do what they do. And there's zero accountability. And then you start being called bullies, and you start being called, you know, that you're singling people out and you're being mean, and, oh, this person's been here forever, why, blah, blah, blah. Or this person's a really good guy. You know, I don't think being a good guy is a qualification to stay in a job. If you don't know how to do your job, let's work on either giving you the skills to get you up to where you need to be, or let's, you know, find somewhere that fits your skill set better. So, you know, I feel like we need to be flexible as well. Like, you know, someone's just floundering in their job, you know, let's support them. Let's build up our HR department to work with people if they don't make it through their probationary period. Why is that? What skills didn't you have to better yourself? You know, we have so many resources here within our organization that would serve our membership a lot better, that we just kind of feel like we hide or we keep because you're not an employee yet. So I feel like this is a great start. I think we should continue these. I think that, you know, maybe having PDs for tribal council would be good, even if it is generic. Maybe down the road, you know, maybe we get to write our own PDs. Maybe we have special interests that we look at. And this is what we're going to focus on for the next 4 years. And we put measurables in there. You know, my measurables for myself were the things that I said during my campaign. You know, one of them is accomplished. I got a community garden, check. And that's the accountability I hold myself to. You know, I don't expect anybody to hold me to that. But I'm sure as hell going to try to set the example and set it for, you know, the people that I serve and then the people that look to us as leaders. So thank you.
Fred?
Shelley brought up something too that and I've said, repeating myself, I don't know why we have a hard time going back sometimes. Can anybody remember why we went to the 4-day week? You know, I believe that there again, there was a need at the time, but we have the hardest time going back. I mean, I believe that we should go back to 5/8. But is it popular? You know, I've heard this too. Oh, shoot, you know, you're probably going to lose your election if you go, you know, you hear those comments. But, you know, I think Shelley brought up that point that, you know, the 5-day work week. Why is it so hard to go back to that? Well, in some places, it's not very popular, you know, to do that, but it sure would be more, I think our membership would benefit from it because you have somebody there, you know, in those positions like tribal health, you know, people who depend on the health, and some places are closed. Maybe the pharmacy is open, but anyway.
Anita?
And I'm sorry if I miss this, but one of the things I think is so frustrating is that individuals come in here a year ago and ask for help. And I think if it has to do with codes and ordinances and stuff, that's where we should be focusing. I'm hoping for that help, and I'm hoping that's the direction that we're now leaning for, because those individuals' circumstance has not changed. And that's frustrating to me to sit back a year later and say, well, yeah, we were going to help and it didn't happen. So that's part of this reorganization that I'm looking forward to, that'll give us more opportunity to work on those issues that we're having and enforcement. And so anyway, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. That's almost a really good place to kind of tie it up. I mean, that, you know, everything we talked about, like, I mean, I think number one is kind of customer constituent service, make people have a voice to be heard, ways to get their issues resolved. But at the end of the day, we need to look systemically at, is there something we need to be doing differently so that this doesn't happen? This doesn't keep happening over and over again. So I mean, Jordan, did you have anything that you wanted to ask questions on right now?
Yeah, if I could, I just want to kind of reiterate what I'm hearing. So I hear, like Ryan mentioned, just like the kind of big picture customer service, how do we serve our membership? And then a lot of questions about how council operates. And so I have other questions about that probably fall underneath that. I think this will probably be a series of discussions, is what I'm getting the sense of. Because then underneath council, I have officers. I'm wondering if we want to define officer roles more perhaps. Perhaps council participation on committees. And then there's a whole other side of my brain that I'm thinking about, where under section 17 of the Indian Organization Act, there's the CSKT Corporation. You guys are all the board of directors for that. And so that might be in a whole follow-up conversation. So I don't want to get mired in all those details right now, but those are the things I see coming up. So I'm just kind of curious about how we want to proceed with these conversations, because I think we might have several.
Carol?
You just mentioned something to me that was confusing. You said officers. When you say officers, I think of these officers. I don't think of Rick and his. So what officers were you referring to?
Councilwoman Langford, I mean, like I think the chair position is defined, but the vice chair, treasurer, secretary, and then on the board of directors for the corporation, there's probably other officers on that as well. I think it lines up.
But I think we need to make sure that the officers that Rick has, his officers, are not confused with these officers.
Council officers, okay.
Yeah, because I think that's important to, because I know not Shelley, but Ellie does the corporation papers. And you do that, right? Yeah. And I had that job at one time, so I kind of know what it's about. But somebody called me and said, I don't know anything where to even start for incorporation. And I was kind of confused. I think I sent him to Ryan or Ron or somebody.
So one of the things, the three of us kind of huddled up before we met with you this morning, and one of the things Rick suggested is that that this is very, very likely going to be an ongoing series of conversations. I feel like, at least what I heard today here, I think we've got a really good start on something that we can take back. Jordan can kind of try to lay it out, organize a little bit, and present it to you, and then we can continue the discussion. But one of Rick's ideas is that, you know, the next time we meet, maybe shouldn't necessarily be a specific date on the calendar, but kind of when we're ready. So when after Jordan's had some time to put this together, kind of talk about it with us, then we come back and we pick up this conversation. Because I think we sort of scratched the surface here on taking care of the big issue that sort of permeates everything. But then we've got like Anita was saying with, these other policies and stuff that we want to be talking about, like the ones we had just 2 days ago on marijuana, where to even start on that. And so I think you guys have watched how I work long enough to know that I try to take things that seem like big, complicated problems and break it out into smaller chunks so that we can kind of tackle each one of them. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping we can do. And I think this is one really good chunk that has, it in and of itself is actually pretty complex when you start listening to all the different, perspectives of how things come in and where the bottlenecks are, where things aren't getting done. And then, as you just said at the end, Vice Chair, that, 3 years later, the same complaint from the same person, that means we must be doing something wrong. But at the same time, also analyzing, where government comes in and where other organizations and entities come in. I think that's something that we can try to require Jordan to sit down and kind of map out for us a little bit. And I mean, I think as I'm sitting here right now, I don't know what form that's going to take. I don't know if it's going to be an essay or if it's going to be a PowerPoint presentation or what, but I think that's something we can let him play with a little bit and then kind of staff it with us and we'll come back. In the meantime, I'd sent out, we talked about this, I guess, on Tuesday, and then I'd sent out an email and several of you've already submitted your priority wish list. And, very clear that you guys put a lot of thought into it, that those of you who have already responded, and the rest of you, I'm sure, are putting extra thought into it as you're working to get that sent over to me. But I mean, I think it's really, I'd like to interject that conversation in as well, because I think what I'm hearing today is if we address this, this component, then that allows us to actually start working on some of these other goals that are going to kind of bring it full circle and maybe also help in making sure that we're providing, excellent customer service, responsiveness to constituents, that sort of thing. So, Rick or Jordan, anything else? This has been a great discussion, but I feel like this is just like a really good spot to just take a break and not let it go too far where it starts to fall apart. Sometimes we do that. I mean, Rick says I do it, but he can talk just as much as I can. But, where we talk ourselves around to the point where we're disgusted. And I feel like we're not there at this point. I mean, we're frustrated, but we're going to work on something that we're frustrated about. If that makes sense.
So, I really appreciate this conversation today, and I think we're doing this with the good intention of, improving our services and being more efficient to the membership and allowing council to finally work on some initiatives, that are may or may not be, staff driven or whatever. But I was wondering if Dan has any input, sitting here listening to us. And I know you've expressed frustrations with kind of the way we have been operating. Did you want to say anything, Dan?
Not really. I really enjoy listening to it. It gives me a lot to think about and see the frustrations you guys have. Makes me, like I said, this is where it all needs to happen. There needs to be conversations. And I just appreciate you guys, and I think you're doing a good job.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dan.
Ellie?
I just want to thank you guys too for coming in today. This conversation is exciting to me. I feel like I see good things coming out of it, and it's just really hopeful. I just see systems improving across the board, and I'm very optimistic and so appreciate the start of these conversations.
Okay, well, we did have our planning discussion on the agenda for like an hour ago, but I think we're going to move that to the afternoon at 2. And we'll go ahead with our shareholder meeting with EKI at 1. So Jordan?
If I could ask you guys a question about approving a grant extension. On my calendar, I noticed today that there's the juvenile wellness grant with the Office of Tribal Justice, which we were getting ready to go to, where were we going last year? To Layla, yeah, and then COVID hit and like, oh my gosh. And so we're finally starting to get out of that. But the extension was until the end of this month. And so I'm hoping council would approve a letter to ask for another year extension.
Motion by Carol, second by Martin. All those in favor? Motion carries unanimous.
All right, I'll get that letter to you, but thank you. Maybe we can finally get that trip in, so we'll see. Well, thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be back.
Okay, we'll come back at 1 o'clock with, for EKI shareholders.